Now we shall discuss about the democratic politics. Now in the previous year, in the democratic politics 1 book, we have dealt about the democracy. How is a democracy established? What are the factors that led towards the establishment of democracy? Now when we talk about democracy, as you all know, the famous definition of democracy is the government or the framing of the government is done according to the wish of the people to lead or to look after the needs of the people, and finally it can be changed by the people or formed by the people. So as Abraham Lincoln has clearly defined it, to the people, of the people, by the people is the actual framing of democracy in the modern days. Now in the previous book, that is in grade 9, we have clearly studied about the factors, the establishments of democracy, and let us call that a tour towards democracy. Now we shall understand how is a democracy working actually in reality. We all know that democracy is the sharing of power between the three major organs, that is the legislative, the next is the executive, and while the third one is the judiciary. Now the intelligent sharing of power between the legislative, executive and judiciary, and none of the above three organs will have the same or more power access when compared to the other organs. So it is a very clever and an intelligent sharing between the legislative, the executive and the judiciary, and finally branded or elected by the people. Let us understand this one like legislative is the number of people's representatives representing this one. From there we get the government forming the union government as well as the state governments, and then we have the integrated independent judiciary, which is head by the Supreme Court, or the apex court is Supreme Court. So in case if the legislature is not having the confidence of the people, obviously legislator have to resign from there or move away from the office. When there is no power in the people's confidence here in the legislative, obviously the executive, means the government which is holding the power, has to resign immediately. So the final say of any actions which are taken by the government are governed or judged by the people. In case if any of the laws which are framed and drafted by the legislature and which is going to be executed by the executive, which is not in the interest of the people, which will be questioned by the judiciary through the special powers called judicial review. So this framework has established democracy to be the best form of government in the modern days of the 20th and the 21st century. That is the reason why the people, those who are not interested in democracy, also started to slowly merge or march towards the democratic setup. We have observed in various nations that they have moved towards the democratic setup from the later half of the 19th century to the early part of the 20th century and the early years of the 21st century. Still it is going on. Nearly more than 120 nations in the world are now following the democratic system of governments. Now in this unit, we call the name of the unit as power sharing. So when we call about power sharing, we are not actually dealing with the concept of the legislative powers, the executive powers or the judiciary powers. Here we are dealing with the powers shared between the people according to certain examples. So in our next step towards the learning of democracy, here we are heading towards the power sharing concept at various scenarios, various situations experienced or extended by the people according to the situations, what was actually happening that time, how can we interpret that actions towards the developments of democratic setup in that particular nation. We shall understand this one with two examples in regards to Belgium and in regards to Sri Lanka. What happened in Belgium? What happened in Sri Lanka? What is the actual problem there? That we shall analyze now. So, in order to understand the concept of power sharing, let us try to understand with two examples. Actually, as soon as the word power sharing is read out, you generally get a doubt in your minds that sharing means dividing. This is a common scenario. We get the doubt like sharing means dividing the power. Here actually we are not dividing the power, we are understanding the influence of the people on the say or the actions of the government. Now, let us discuss about Belgium. Belgium as you all know, Belgium is located in European continent. So, in which continent we have Belgium? In Europe. Towards which part of Europe do we have the location of Belgium? Belgium is located towards the western part of Europe, where it is having the boundaries with France on the southwestern side. As it moves on towards that, we have Netherlands, and we also have Luxembourg, and also we have the Atlantic Ocean on the boundaries. So, now let us try to understand actually what is the actual problem or the actual extent of Belgium. In order to understand what actually is happening in Belgium, we need to understand the exact location of Belgium. When Belgium is located on the western part of Europe, very close to France, and then we can understand it in such a way like Belgium is a very small country in Europe, maybe equal to the size of Haryana, which is a state in India, a very small region, and the population may be nearly more than 1 crore or nearby to 1 crore, that is nearly 10 million. And if we take the Haryana population, maybe a little bit more than Haryana's population. So, here the actual thing is we have two different groups of people living here or two different communities of people living here. So, how is the power sharing happening? What happened actually there? What is the main problem for the Belgium people? We shall know what is the problem actually first, then we shall try to find out what happened as a solution for this one. So, as we all know that Belgium is surrounded by Germany, France, the Netherlands. Obviously, we have the people or the population of Belgium having an influence of the French speaking people here, the German speaking people here, and the mother tongue of the Belgium or the whole official language of Belgium, that is the Dutch people are also influenced because the Netherlands have influence there. So now because of this complex population which is in Belgium, it gave rise to a typical problem in the capital city. Let us try to understand it in detail. Now, if we divide the entire complex population, which is a mixed diversified population of French people, French language spoken people, then German language spoken people, and the Dutch language spoken people. So when all these three different category language spoken people are living together in a nation and they need to form a government or they need to prove the majority, like for example, let us take India. In India, we have majority of them follow the religion of Hinduism. In Pakistan, they follow the religion of Islam, or the dominant language in India was Hindi. In the same way in Pakistan, they follow the Urdu. So in this way, we can't determine what is the exact or the official language of this Belgium or who are the majority population of people. So let us try to find out a solution for this. Let us see here. The entire 59% of people live near the Flemish region and they speak the Dutch language. So, the 59% means it's nearly 60%, 2/3 of the population in Belgium read or talk the language called Dutch language, which means 60% of the entire population is influenced by the Netherlands and they have the language spoken is Dutch. They follow the culture, everything in respective to the Netherlands. And then in the same way, when we talk about the rest of the people, nearly 40% of people live in the region called Wallonia, where we have the people speaking the language called French language. So here we find the influence of France here. So 2/3 of the population in the nation are speaking Dutch language, or two parts, if you divide it the entire into like 40% of the people are speaking French language. Now moving on to the other 1% which are left out, they speak the 1% Bulgarians speak the German language. So it is very clearly evident for us that the surrounding regions of Belgium, the nations like Germany, Netherlands and France are influencing the people of Belgium. It has happened for certain centuries. That is the reason why we have the mixed complex population existing in Belgium, which gave rise to this kind of population of people living there. Now from this, it is very clear for us that the majority of the people's spoken language in Belgium is Dutch. The next second most spoken language in Belgium is French. Now the rest of the Germans are not so influential, we can get them because they are in very less number, or let's call them as minority population people. Now the capital of Belgium is Brussels. In Brussels, if we divide the entire Brussels population into percentage ratio and find out how much percentage of people actually speak the French language and the Dutch language, as per the entire country's calculations, we have understood that nearly 60%, which is 2/3 of the majority of the people, speak Dutch language in the entire nation. But in the capital city, we have only 20% of the people speaking the Dutch language, while the rest of the people, 80%, speak the French language. Now, the situation is completely different from the entire nation to the particular capital city. When we covered the entire nation, we came to know that in entire nation we have the Dutch spoken people are in majority, while the French spoken people are in minority. But in the actual capital city of Belgium, that is Brussels, we have 80% of people speaking in French and only 20% of people speaking in Dutch language. So this is a situation which is happening in giving rise to a spectacular or a new kind of problem, because the French people are exposed to various kinds of educations or modern means of educations. They are well established, rich and the prosperous community in the capital city as well as in the nation, while the Dutch people are not exposed. They got the exposure of development or the economic development which in the later part of the 19th century. So when compared to the French spoken people, French community people, the Dutch spoken community people are less advanced. Yes, they may be in majority in the nation, but the influential people in Belgium are the French spoken people. Now in the capital city, we have the majority of people are French spoken people, the minority comes under Dutch spoken people, but in the entire nation group we have 60%, which means 2/3 of the population are Dutch spoken people, and only two parts, that is 40%, are the French spoken people. If the government frames any laws according to the influence in the city of the capital city, that is Brussels, and concludes like influence of French people is more on the government, officially they are rich people, they are well educated, well advanced, economically well settled people, so they were able to influence the government to make policies in the favor of the French community people. Whereas in the actual reality, the French spoken people are in the entire nationwide are only two parts, whereas 2/3 parts are covered by the Dutch spoken people. So the Dutch spoken people are maybe in minority in the capital city, but in the actual entire nation, the majority of the population is Dutch spoken people. This gave rise to a new problem during the 1950s and 60s. So during 1950s and 1960s, we have a different problem popping up in Belgium capital Brussels. If we stick to the capital's consensus or the statistics, they can't do the justice to the entire nation. If we stick to the nation, then they can't do justice to the most influential people in the society, though they may be minority in the nation, but they are very powerful in the capital city. So what to do? This is a really spectacular and a rare problem, generally which we never come across. So what happened next? Before finding the solution for this one, let us also find out what happened in a very same situation at a different place which is very close to India in the same Asian continent. Let us find out what happened in Sri Lanka. So now let us try to understand one more situation where the same kind of situation or scenario has been existing. Now let us take Belgium is in Europe. We have studied about the condition existing in Europe. Now let us try to understand a very close country to India, just down of India, that is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is just a few miles away from India, located in the Indian Ocean. It is an island country where diverse population is also a specific feature of Sri Lankan diverse population or Sri Lanka's actual population consensus. Now let us try to understand the situation which is existing in Sri Lanka also. Sri Lanka is bound by the ocean on the all sides. That is the reason why we call it as an island country there. And now here in the Indian Ocean, just very close to India, we have Sri Lanka. So now let us divide the Sri Lankan population into the categories on the language spoken by them. Now if we divide the population in the basis of the languages, 74% of the people in Sri Lanka speak the language of Sinhala, which is their official language of Sri Lanka, and the rest of the 18% people speak the language of Tamil. Here is a small twist. The Tamil spoken people are not the true origins of Sri Lankans. There are again two groups in the Tamil spoken people. One, the native Tamilians. The next are the Indian Tamilians. Why are we discussing about the Indian Tamilians in the Sri Lankan population consensus? Here, the Tamilians who are accumulating 18% in Sri Lanka are actually not completely born and brought up in Sri Lanka. The basic people, those who are born and brought up in Sri Lanka, are called as native Tamilians or Sri Lankan Tamilians. These people, other than these people also, we have Tamilians whose forefathers migrated from India and got settled in Sri Lanka. So we have the basic division of population in the Tamilians, that is the native Tamilians and the Indian Tamilians. Now the other languages, leaving apart the language, what is the religion that they follow here is the Sinhalas, most of them follow the religion of Buddhism, while the Tamilians follow the religion of Hinduism or Islam religion or Muslims, and nearly 7% of them follow Christianity. Now, so the entire understanding of Sri Lankan population is like this. We have a diverse population, nearly 2 crores of population is living in Sri Lanka. It is the size of Sri Lanka actually is smaller or equal to the size of Haryana state, same as that of Belgium. The population is a bit higher than Haryana region, and we have again the complex group of diverse population here, that is the Sinhala population existing 74%. The Sinhala language spoken people are 74%. They follow the religion of Buddhism, most of them are the favorites of Buddhist religion. And we have Tamilians 18%, and these 18% Tamilians are again divided into native Tamilians, those are who are born and brought up basically belonging to Sri Lanka, and we have the forefathers who migrated from India and settled in Sri Lanka. Those people are known as Indian Tamilians. Then moving on to the religion which is followed by the Tamilians, some follow Hinduism, some follow Islam religion, Muslim community people, and the rest 7% of the people are following the religion of Christianity. So the similar situation existed in Belgium, where we have the division of the people on the basis of language. In the same way, we have one more example here in Sri Lanka, where they have the similar kind of situation. So now, what happened actually in the practical situation here? Is democracy able to provide the successful solution to the diverse groups in the nations? Let us look at both the situations, what happened, so that we can understand the actual framework of democracy. Now, what happened actually is that we have seen the two scenarios in Belgium and in the Sri Lanka. If you remember the Belgium scenario here, the majority of people in the nation is the Dutch spoken people who would try to take a control or the other group of people, and it would be messing up with the French people trying to claim the influence on the capital, while the Dutch people trying to claim their influence over the nation. So situations would have become worst, where in the same case with Sri Lanka here, the Sinhalese were more than majority here, 74%, who would try to claim their majority on the other groups like the Tamilians, where they would be facing difficulties here. So let us try to understand actually what happened here and what are the consequences of this one. Now, in Sri Lanka, they adopted the policy of majoritarianism. As if you all know, in some terms, the democracy is nothing but the rule of the majority. We consider democracy as the large participation of the people in the framing or the policy work of the government, or in order to establish the government, they choose their representatives. So now, let us assume like democracy is nothing but the rule of the majority, and Sinhalas are in majority in Sri Lanka. Obviously, it would be right to conclude like Sinhalas are having a major say in the democratic setup of Sri Lanka. The Sri Lanka is a nation which was once a colony of the British as a part and parcel of India. It is also known as classical colony. As the time passed on, India emerged as an independent nation in the year 1947. In the very next year, in 1948, Sri Lanka has been given freedom. So the newly independent nation got its independence in the year 1948 from the Britishers and established himself as an independent nation, that is Sri Lanka now. So as we all know, the Sinhalese are 74% in the entire population of Sri Lanka. Obviously, the Sinhala supremacy has been tried to be established by the governments, by the leaders who later on came to power. As you all know that the majority of the population in Sri Lanka are Sinhala people. The minority community comes the Tamilians, and again there is a division in the Tamilians, that is they are Indian Tamilians, Sri Lankan Tamilians. So obviously this is the situation now, and they have gone to the opinion of majoritarian rule over the minority, as democracy would mostly be considered as the rule of majority. So depending on the policy of the rule of the majority, the leaders, whoever has been established as the new emerging leaders of Sri Lanka, tried to bring the supremacy of the Sinhala people. So this gave in 1956 to bring or to frame a special laws or special acts giving a special importance or special privileges to to the people of the Sinhala community people and disregarding them from the privileges of the Tamilians. So, for example, if there are any posts in regarding to the university positions or anything else, the Sinhala people will be given preference for them to get job there. The Tamilians were denied the equal opportunities in the university. Though it may be a central university, but the Tamilians are denied the job opportunities because they do not belong to the majority group of people in the nation. So these kind of laws have started to alienate the people of Tamilians from the existing government and a section of people living there. Slowly, this led to a situation where there is inequality popping up in the actual looking of the people. There is a lot of discrimination between the Sinhala community people and the Tamilians. And later on, when the next year, when the Sri Lankan new constitution was drafted, in the new constitution, they clearly made specification about the religion, that the new constitution would strive to foster the religion of Buddhism as the national religion or the state religion of Sri Lanka. So, when the new government was formed and it started to declare publicly that they are going to make Buddhism as an official religion and foster and make the steps to foster Buddhism in the entire Sri Lanka. So these kind of developments, the 1956 Act or the special privileges which are granted to the Sinhala community people, made the Tamilians to feel that they are being discarded from the original benefits what they have to get. They started to feel alienated from the actual framework of the equality status. So when these kind of developments approached, the Tamilians started to raise their voice. They started to push towards the political parties and establish the political parties and started to make Tamil to be recognized as an official language. So the efforts which were kept by the Tamilians in the initial years were being neglected and they were never being acknowledged with a positive sign by the then existing Sri Lankan government. These all steps further led to establish a strong group or an emerging political party known as the Tamil Eelam. So, the new party which came up in 1980 with the truly support of the Tamilians who are living in the northern part and the northeastern provinces of Sri Lanka is the Tamil Eelam group in 1980. This party aim was to bring an equal status to the Tamilians and a respect to the religions, the practices which are followed by the Tamilians. So this step further led a controversy and a conflict between the dominant Sinhala group and the minority group of Tamilians. This led to a disastrous civil war. Civil war means the people fight with each other. A particular group of people come in conflict with the other group of people, as it happened now with the conflict of Sinhalas versus the Tamilians led to a civil war, and this war led to a setback to the development of Sri Lanka, not only in the terms of economics but also socio-cultural development also has come down drastically. So the civil war has killed many thousands of people of both the communities. It has drawback the entire development graph of Sri Lanka to a very drastically low level. The security levels in Sri Lanka were also being tightened up. The situations are completely different with the prior to the actual setup of Sri Lanka and after the civil war. The situations became worst. The political instability also started to pop up, and it is like a war situation between the people of their own country people of Tamilians as well as the Sinhala group. So these kind of civil wars or the majoritarianism did not work properly in Sri Lanka. Yes, it is a democratic definition of the rule of the majority, and we need to understand the clauses of democracy very clearly, that Everybody should be given the opportunity of equality here. The basic things of equality, liberty and justice, when these are denied in any society, in any context, obviously that would lead to a revolt or a war or a mistrust between the existing communities of people, what actually happened in the example of Sri Lanka. So this civil war has set back the development of Sri Lanka socially, economically and even politically. Now let us see what happened in Belgium. Now let us check out what happened in Belgium. The policy which is adopted in Belgium was the accommodation policy. When we discussed about the Sri Lankan policy, we discussed about the attitude of the majoritarianism. So we have summed up with the conclusion like democracy is a decision of the majority or the rule of the majority. But while in Belgium they have taken up the other innovative step, they have taken the policy of accommodating everybody. They have justified everybody. They have taken all the steps to satisfy and give the equal opportunities to all sections of the people. Let us see what are the new changes that they have come up. This innovative idea of the Belgium people have marked them to be in the top ranking of the new group and gave a special significant place in the entire European nations. So let us find out what's that. First, the constitution has been amended nearly 4 times to get the accurate and acceptability of all the communities of the people. We have a major problem with the language or the linguistic division. The French spoken people, the Dutch spoken people as well as the German spoken people. So they have created certain new organs or new changes which have brought them to live peacefully in coexistence with the other linguistic community people. Let us see what are those. First, they have given equal number of Dutch and French language spoken people ministers in their union cabinet or in the central ministry. So we have n number of French people, it is mean that we have n number of Dutch spoken people. Let us take n value as 2. 2 French people, 2 Dutch people will obviously have their representation in the central government of the Belgium. And the next step, what is a major development was equal number of votes are required if any linguistic changes are to be made. It needs equal number of votes from the language spoken people of French as well as from the Dutch people to have the concerns or to change anything. Any language people cannot change it as if wish, they need to change it. So for this purpose, they have established a special government called the community government, which is not a part of the union government or the central government or the state governments. The union government, central government has divided various of its powers and given that powers in the form of the decentralization to the respective 2 states so that central government would not have more pressure while the state governments will be more accountable to that particular linguistic community people. And while moving on to the community government people will be looking after the affairs in regarding to cultural, educational and the linguistic groups. So any cultural changes, any educational changes or any linguistic changes whichever need to be done will be adopted or resolutions will be passed by the community government. Who elects the community government? The community government is elected by the 3 different language spoken people wherever they may be living. They have a right to choose their government with their equal number of votes representation given according to the language here. So French people will be there, Dutch people will be there, the German people also will be there. These people will be forming the community government in order to look after the affairs in regards to cultural changes, educational requirements or the linguistic necessaries or any other further developments. So this kind of a new innovative thinking which accommodated the 3 different language spoken people with an equal respect and equal opportunity, this has framed them to be in the front runner of a true democratic spirit. When all the European nations formed together to form a new group called European Union, they choose to keep Brussels as the headquarters. The special significance of Brussels is that in the entire nation, we have the people, Dutch spoken people are in majority while the French spoken people are in minority. Well, in the capital city, we have the French spoken people in majority and the Dutch spoken people in minority. So situation was completely opposite. So how can the people accept the dominance of a particular government? So in the city or in the capital city, the Dutch spoken people have accepted the dominance of the French spoken people according to the existing population statistics, while in the same way the French spoken people have accepted the equal status or the dominant status of the Dutch spoken people who are in majority in the entire nation. So in the states we have Dutch spoken people's government framing the laws, while in this capital city we have the French spoken people looking after the government affairs. So in this way they are having the mutual concerns and respect to each other language community people, and this has brought Brussels to the attention of the world. And when the European nation groups all together formed the European Union, and the European Union was given special significance for the Brussels by picking up to have a headquarters at the capital of Belgium, that is Brussels. So today the European Union's headquarters is located at Brussels. We have seen the entire setup of Brussels. Yes, it is a very complex, very innovative and a very tough one to understand, even not only for the others of Belgian people but also for the people those who are living in Belgium also. But it is actually practically working very successfully. It has avoided the civil war situations which have turned on in Sri Lanka, where it could not happen here. Everybody is living happily, peacefully and enjoying the equal status in respect to the others. So that made Brussels to be the headquarters of European Union, while in Sri Lanka we have civil war which has brought it back in terms of economic, social and the cultural developments, whereas today Belgium is a fast developing nation and has an equal opportunity for all its members or the national people living in that country enjoy the equal status, where it is contrary in Sri Lanka. While Sri Lanka has adopted the majoritarianism opinion here in the true democratic setup, while these people in Belgium have applied the accommodation policy of democratic setup here. So we shall discuss what happened actually in Belgium and Sri Lanka. Now we can understand that when the basic things like equality is denied, obviously the people would start to raise the voices, question them, which may further lead in the worst situations to civil wars or revolts. So actual sharing of power means not dividing the power but making accessible to all the people to have their natural share in the existence of power or in the utilization of power. Now, as we discussed about the Belgian model, and the Sri Lankan system, if you look at both the examples here, the Belgian has given the accommodation policy, like they accommodated interest of all the three language community people, while the Sri Lankan people have used the majoritarian method. So from this it is very easy for us to conclude that the actual perception or the point of view here to understand the concept of power sharing is that when a majority of the community tries to put their opinion on the minority group, initially it may be successful, but in the long run it will definitely affect the unity of the country, and as well as it brings instability politically and economically also. Now, why is power sharing required for us? What is the reason, or why should we share power? What is the basic reason to share power, and what is the main purpose or the theme behind sharing power? What does it entrust towards the people? That we shall find out now. So why should we share power, or why is power sharing desirable? For that, the first reason is it satisfies the social groups. The two different groups in the society can get satisfaction, which further avoids the issues of conflicts between the two groups. So this can make the country to be stable. It brings political stability. At the same time, both the community people feel that it is their government, and finally they would be in a economic development status of the nation also. They could be contributing for the economic development of the nation through having political stability. So the sharing of the power firstly brings the two groups to be satisfying their own needs and wants, and finally it brings satisfaction for the group, which may avoid the conflicts or the confusions or the overburdening of the majority's opinion over the minorities. So as we have seen in the accommodation policy of the Belgian model, there we can understand that in the city, when the French people are more and the Dutch people are less, they have agreed to give equal representation in the capital city of Brussels, whereas in the entire nation we have the French spoken people very less number when compared to the Dutch spoken people, where they have agreed further in the union government to have equal number of seats for the French people as well as for the Dutch spoken people. So in this way the mutual concerns will be addressed through having the power sharing between the two different groups which are in existence, which will also avoid the state of conflict and which will further strengthen the nation's political stability and also leads to economic development. Then what is the second major reason? The second major reason is prudential. The word prudential means here for us to provide a fostering development or organizing in a better way to have a better development. Especially this word is used for business developments or the economic transactions. But why do we use this word in the political context? When we use the word political context here, it means that here we are trying our level best to have the equal percentage of share for the particular group of people who are part and parcel of the same society. So this is the second valid reason why we wish to have power sharing. So the first reason to accommodate the different groups. The second reason we will check it out in detail now. A small clarification here. The first reason is called prudential because it tries to develop or satisfy the wants and the needs of both the groups in the society, while the second reason is put forward like this to have on the moral grounds, the moral values. The moral values which intends that a person or a citizen has to know, or in democracy, the true spirit of a democracy lies in providing the justification like who is ruling us, who are guiding us, who are taking on ahead a lead towards us and developing the nation or making us to follow certain rules and regulations. These all are a part and parcel of democracy. So as a second major reason for having the justice or justification for the concept of power sharing in the democratic setup leads to that morally or the citizens always have right to know what is their actual right there or what is the actual consequence that they are required here to do any such kind of power sharing concepts. Now let us look at an example, the Caliph's dilemma. What is his dilemma given here? What are the problems that he is facing, or what is his doubt? We will just look at the story once, then we can understand what is the possible solution for that. Now we shall discuss about Khalil's dilemma. Dilemma means it is a situation where you can't judge, either you have to go to this side or this side. So this kind of confucius state is known as dilemma. Now when we discuss about dilemma or Khalil's dilemma, who brought this character for us? Actually, Vikram was riding his bike, and we have the pillion rider Vital sitting at the back on the bike. So while they were moving on a journey, or when he was riding the bike, generally the drivers or the driving person of a bike does not talk much, but the pillion rider who sits at the back of him will try to convey something when we have a long drive. So in the same process, Vital started to tell a story which happened in Lebanon. So he want to explain the details, and he had a small confusion on this part. So let us try to know what Vital want to convey to Vikram here. So in the story, we are going to discuss about the country called Lebanon. The capital city of Lebanon is Beirut, and there is a person called Khalil who lives here. His parents, his father was an Orthodox Christian, while his mother was a Sunni Muslim, and they got married. They gave birth to Khalil, where Khalil now either follows this Christianity or the Islam religion, and at the same time he never want to be associated with any of these religions. So he is not following the Christianity of Orthodox Christianity or the religion of Islam. Now the key core role in our lesson or in that story here is that the Lebanon government has banned certain positions for certain categories of people. Let us find out why did Lebanon has banned these things. It is like this. When initially the period went on, like let us go to the age of fathers period or the forefathers of Khalil. There were Islam people and there were Christians. There was a continuous civil war between them because of the injustice which is happening. For example, if the Christian supporting government forms the rule, obviously they are troubling the Islam community people. If the Islam government comes into power, they are troubling the other community people. So in order to have this led to a further serious civil war. So in this civil war, they lost many of their people. They killed each other, the other groups. The particular group killed the other group, and there was a lot of bloodshed. And even Khalil lost one of his family relatives who lost in this one. So in this civil war, finally it concluded to peace treaty, like ending up with these declarations. That is, the post of the president is declared for the Catholic Christianity group, while the prime minister will be from Sunni Islam group, and the deputy prime minister post is allotted for Orthodox Christianity, and the speaker post is given for the Shia group of Muslims. So in order to accommodate all the different categories of people, those who are living in Lebanon, generally we find this kind of culture in the cosmopolitan regions. In a cosmopolitan society where you have people from various corners of the world, from different cultures, different traditions, different languages, people living together, and sometimes they fell in love with each other and they get married or they get attracted towards each other, they share the common feelings, they marry each other, and they further proceed on by having children, and this led to have a family like Khalil. Now Khalil is not following either Christianity or the religion of Islam, so he never want to be claimed himself that he either follows his father's religion or his mother's religion. So now, even though Khalil is a very famous political personality in Lebanon, he is a well-known person, famous person, but he cannot become the president of the Lebanon or the prime minister of Lebanon, because the president post is reserved for the Catholic community people, while the prime minister is given for the Sunni community people. Now Khalil have a doubt, why is Lebanon following this kind of steps? Why could not Lebanon try or change its policy towards the other nations, like a democratic country where, like in India, we don't have the post reserved for any particular category of people. For example, if you take Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, he belongs to a Sikh community. He is being heading the government for the past 10 years. Now we have Narendra Modi. He claims to be a Hindu. He is a Orthodox Hindu person who follows the religion of Hinduism very well or seriously, and he is a member of RSS also. So now there is no particular reservation on the post of the Prime Minister or on the post of the President in India. Whoever wins the elections, whoever can get the support of the people will obviously become the ruler, the Prime Minister or the President. So why can't Lebanon follow this kind of model? Because the real talented people would obviously get people's approval to become the President or the Prime Minister, but not on the basis of a religion or a particular community people. So this was a confusion dilemma expressed by Khalil. The story has not ended yet, but this reveals for us the situations which are happening around the world for us. So now let us try to understand what are the basic types of sharing of power. So as we have studied the reasons why we need to have the power sharing, now we shall discuss about the different forms of power sharing. Generally, we find the sharing of power between the various organs of the government. Let us take the different organs of the government. First organ is the legislative, executive and judiciary. So the legislative, executive and judiciary are the three different organs of the government, where these three organs share the power of the government. So these three are considered as the main executive or the main organs of the government. So when the power is shared between the legislative, executive and the judiciary, these three organs try to check the each other organ and does not allow to have a particular organ more powers when compared to the other organs, and they also need a perfect justification to the transfer of any kind of actions or any kind of severe steps which are taken by a particular organization. In case if it is against the interest of the people, the other organs try to check it on the existing organ or the organ which is showing its influence. So the first form of sharing of power generally we see is in the organ sharing, that is between the legislative, executive and judiciary. This theory or this concept of power sharing has actually been adopted by the Montesquieu's from the book of Montesquieu in the Spirit of Laws, where he clearly explains that the actual functioning of the government can be appropriate and can be clearly analyzed or can be action in taken place, because we need to divide or decentralize the powers of the government by allotting various duties to a particular set of duties to a particular section or a particular organization. Let us take like legislature. All the legislation, framing of the constitutions, drafting of the constitution or making the laws, rules, regulations are done by the legislature. The executing, the framed laws by the people's representatives will be executed by the government, which is a key function of the government. It may be the Prime Minister headed or the President. There it is called the executive government, and these two organs, whether they are functioning properly or not, whether they are being in terms of the constitutional requirements or in the spirit of the democratic setup, this can be analyzed, checked and can also be drafting or controlling. If anything goes beyond the limit, that power is given to the judiciary through the concept of judicial review. Now, so this kind of setup is seen even in our nation as well as in USA. Why we call our nation and USA similar? Because both the nations are the two largest democratic countries in the world. So India also follows the same democratic setup with the division of the power of legislature, executive and judiciary, while US also has the same kind of setup like legislative, executive and judiciary, where in India we have Prime Minister, the real executive, where in US we have President, the real executive. Maybe the sharing or the system of the pattern of the democratic setup may be different, but we both share the same commonalities of democratic setup. Now, let us move on to the second level of sharing. The second level, that is at the various levels, or various second form of sharing is at the various levels. That is, we have the sharing of power at the central level or union government, which is considered as the more powerful government. For example, in India we have the Indian Union government, which is being continuously present or the more powerful than the respective states governments. So the next level of the government is the state government or the provincial government or the provincial government. So in the central government and the next level is the state government. So the sharing of the power is being done here between the central government and the state governments. So here initially we got the sharing between the different organs of the government. Now we are sharing at the different levels of the government, that is the central government and the state government. The state government name may be different at different places, like in some regions they call it as provincial government, as we have seen in the Belgian model where they have given, they call it as states government. Two states have been given certain powers, where in the same way in almost all the states of the world we don't have this kind of setup, because in Sri Lanka the people have refused to recognize the autonomy of the Tamilians or to give the states autonomy there. So there we don't have a state set of structure there. So maybe whatever it is there, but they did not accept this one, which led to the civil war. Now finally we have the second level of sharing is that at the central level or the union level and the state level or the group of the nation having a union government and the states having a lower level government, and the state governments are not so powerful as that of the union government. They are less powerful when compared to the state union governments. And now when we move on to the other thing, the different social groups, the existing social groups also accommodate the share in the power. Like when we have discussed about the Belgian model, we have discussed about the community government. So in the community government we have accommodated the different linguistic group people to be electing their representatives to frame the laws in the interest of the education, the culture or the other aspects which are affecting the issues of the people. Cultural, educational, linguistic matters can be under the control of the community government. So the different social groups also share the power. So we have third level of sharing power, that is the social groups of sharing power. Here let us take an example of the Belgian model, where we have the sharing of the power of the linguistic community group which shares the power here. So like this we have different setups, different sharing of power between the people. And the next level of sharing of the power is the political parties, the pressure groups and the movements. Political parties, we in the modern days of democracy the political parties play a major role, like the ruling party which holds the power, the opposition party which is having less number of seats and may be established as the second largest party in the election setup. So now the ruling party will have powers, the opposition party will be a checking authority of the power of the union government or the existing ruling party. It acts like a watchdog of the actions of the ruling parties. Now when we take this, they also have certain powers to pass or frame the laws. They would also have to pressurize the government to frame towards certain aspects or to channelize their views to certain issues which are happening in the society. In this way also they can divert or they can grab the attention of the ruling government. And we also have the pressure groups trying to bring the pressure on the groups like the linguistic groups, the union groups or the business community group, any group which would try to influence them or which would try to make participation through the government, through electing the government, to sending its representatives. Like this, we have the sharing at the various levels. Now, this sharing is compulsory as it is a true spirit of democracy, because in democracy we would like to have the sharing of power between the maximum number of people as possible. If you have seen the 2014 elected government of Narendra Modi, recently the cabinet has been reshuffled and the number of ministers in the cabinet has been increased to nearly 70 ministers. So, as it is contrary to the existing previous old monotonous model of government, like the monarchic form of government, where we have only one person having the entire authority in his hands, who may further turn as a tyrant in the future generations, where there have been experiences where people have revolted against such kind of rules, and later on it developed into authority being shared between few people, and later on it got into authority shared between maximum number of people. So now we are in the modern day of 21st century, where we believe in the concept of sharing of power explicitly with a large number of people. So here the concept of power sharing is being introduced to you as a first phase of learning of power in democratic setup in this grade 10. So in this unit we have analyzed about the two situations which are a part and parcel of the democratic nations also, and where the majoritarian opinion or the accommodation opinion which would be successful, which would lead to the further consequences, which is a failure. So what are the further consequences which have been occurred in that particular nations? And in the same way, we also have seen the Lebanon incident, where certain posts are being reserved for certain categories of people, which is completely an injustice to the other section or the communities of people who are living there, who could not do their free flow of elections, or could not win the elections, or could not participate in the elections, because we also have seen the situations of having the Lebanon, where a few posts, especially the key posts in the nation, are being reserved for Muslims, for Christians, for Catholics, for the Orthodox community people. So the other section of people are completely being debarred from claiming or attempting to be a particular post. Let us be the Prime Minister, the President, or the Speaker, or the Deputy Prime Minister, whoever it is. But the forefathers claim that this is the best possible peaceful solution to have peace in the nation. So we also have discussed about the different forms of power sharing, like the first one, different organs, legislative, executive, judiciary, where we have derived this concept of power sharing from the In the Spirit of Laws, written by Montesquieu. And finally, he is an English writer who wrote this book, and he explained clearly what is the need or the purpose of having the division of powers between the different set of organs. And then we have seen the various levels where the union governments and the state governments in countries, and we also have some having provincial governments, some don't have state governments. So in this way, and it also has now various social groups, like which is in the example of the Belgian model, the community government, which accommodated the 3 language spoken people in respects of cultural, educational, or the linguistic issues, will be taking the authority and doing the further required changes. And we also have the political parties, pressure groups, and the movements also pressurizing the democratic governments to the larger extents, either being in the ruling party or in the opposition party, or being a pressure group, or being in a momentum against any kind of issues. So this would further lead to pressurize or have a sharing of the power on the existing democratic setup. So it could also be channelized, or it would be appropriate to say that the decentralization of the power has also been a key role or a concept of power sharing aspect in the democratic setup. Now when we discuss about the second form of various levels of power sharing, we have seen the union government sharing powers with the state governments. Then further again, the state government's powers are again reshared with the district governments or the district administration, which are again reshared with the municipal administrations, and then with the panchayat administration. So this kind of decentralization also is a part and parcel of the existing democratic setup in the key concept of power sharing. So in this way, we can understand and analyze that power sharing has been a true feature of true spirit of democratic setup. When there is no power sharing in a democratic nation or a democratic model of government, then obviously it would not be the true democratic system. It is against the true spirit of the democratic setup.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.